Our quick tip for today is
all about schedules, having printed schedules and making sure everyone has a copy of that printed schedule, as well as a digital copy of that schedule.
That way everyone's on the same page. And if you need to make changes, you can write on it. It's essential.
It's essential for sure.
Cool. Let's get into it. This is the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, where we share top secret tips to help you take your wedding game to the next level.
I'm Annika, and I'm a wedding coordinator, enthusiast, and venue manager for one of the best venues in Idaho.
I'm Chris, and I'm a DJ, master of ceremonies, and all-around lover of weddings.
We're on a mission to improve weddings and wedding professionals everywhere.
Today, we are talking about how to ruin a wedding.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about this one.
I am too. I mean, you never have the hope of ruining a wedding. That's what we're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
But I think we got a good list of ways to ruin a wedding.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we would never do these things, but I mean, I've seen probably all of these things done at a wedding, and it contributes to a not great wedding. And if somebody did all of these, it would not be a good wedding. So let's dive right in to number one.
Yeah. So number one's to just not have a schedule. That's one surefire way to ruin a wedding.
Have you seen weddings that don't have schedules?
Yeah, I definitely have. They show up and they're like, well, I don't know. We'll just go with the flow. And there's just nothing that disrupts a wedding more than nobody knowing what's going on.
Yeah. And for me, so I'm all about trying to build these moments, trying to build special moments throughout the day. And if you don't plan them in, they're not generally going to happen. And the other thing is, if you don't have a schedule, then it's going to fall to somebody, and we'll talk about this, I guess, in a second, but it's going to fall to somebody to have to wrangle people in, unless it's literally just an open house, which I think are boring anyways. But yeah, and that takes that person that's having to wrangle everybody. Oftentimes it's the bride or photographer, and it takes them out of the moment. They aren't able to really participate and be in the moment, which is, to me, that's sad.
Kind of going along with that too, it's if you have your schedule, making sure it's known and it's not just you. I've seen instances where the bride has a schedule, and like you're saying, it takes her out of the moment because nobody else knows what's going on. But she's like, okay, but this is the schedule. But if no one else is aware of what that schedule is, it's just going to completely take her out of her day.
That's so true. I've also seen where one person has this schedule, a different person has this schedule, and we always make it a point to try and send those schedules beforehand so that when we show up, we're all on the same page. Because, we might plan for some really cool thing an hour after the photographer is supposed to be gone. So if we send it beforehand, the photographer can say, actually, we need to move this around, and we can do that beforehand, and that way we're all on the same page. So
yeah, I think we'll definitely get into this just a little more in a future episode. But on top of that, it's, you want everyone to be on the same page with your schedule. I've had instances where I talk with a vendor and I'm like, hey, do you have a copy of the schedule? And they're like, don't worry about it. I got it. And it's like, okay, wait, no, team, we're a team player here,
Right. How am I going to support you in this?
Exactly. And just, oh no, don't worry about it. I got the schedule. You don't need to worry about it. And it's like, okay, but we're a team here. So
yeah, we'll talk about teams. So I have along with schedules, when people don't plan for enough time for various things, right? So when I see receptions that are only 2 hours long, it's almost never enough time for what you want to get done.
I feel like whenever I have seen a 2-hour long reception, they just feel rushed, and you get to the point where you have to start picking and choosing what you want. And I mean, when it's your wedding day, don't you just want everything that you want. You don't want to feel rushed and, oh, well, we don't have time for this. We have to hurry and do this. And,
Yeah.
you want to enjoy it. You don't want to rush through it.
I remember when we got married, Nicole and I, at the end of the wedding day, and I've heard this from multiple people, that we got to the end and we're like, wow, that rushed by so fast. So I can only imagine, and I think we had, 3-hour, 4-hour reception with dancing and all that stuff. So I can only imagine just like a 2-hour reception, like that's your wedding day. Man, I just feel like I'd be missing so much. So
Oh, totally. I do feel like though on the opposite end, there's also scheduling way too much time. And if your schedule is way too long, you start to lose people's attention. So I do think it's
Yeah.
a sweet spot. But I have had weddings that they schedule like an 8-hour reception.
Yeah.
And then by the time it's the send off, nobody's there because, it's just been too long. You've lost them.
yeah, 100%. So most weddings, I would say most wedding venues have to cut off at 10 o'clock, right? And I think probably the most successful time to start is 4 o'clock.
I agree. I
Yeah.
typically recommend around 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
I've had brides that start a lot earlier than that, and it just doesn't seem to work out well.
Just drags.
It just drags
Yeah.
forever. And then if you start past 4, you just feel so rushed and like you're not getting to enjoy your whole day.
Yep.
So
I had one couple, I think it was either 2020, 2021, and they said, we're going to dance for 4 hours. I'm like, you're not going to dance for 4 hours. But they were all long distance runners. The bride and groom were long distance runners.
Oh.
All of their like bridesmaids, groomsmen, everybody was long distance runners. Dude, they danced for 4 hours.
did they really?
I was shocked. So I'm always looking for my next long distance runner bride. and
Yeah.
groom.
I mean, I
Yeah.
do think at the end of the day, you have to know your group.
Yeah.
There are some groups who, like, you could say, oh, you're not going to dance for 4 hours. And then they get all their buddies there and they just are going. And, there's a lot I've been surprised at. And I'm like, wow, all right,
Yeah.
it's a party. But then there's other ones that are like, oh, we'll totally have a dancing group. And it's like pulling teeth to get people on the dance floor.
Yeah.
So I do think there is power in knowing your group.
Knowing your group, 100%. That's good. Next, let's talk about not having someone in charge of running the day. You probably see this a lot, and it probably falls to you, right?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
With weddings that we've hosted, it does end up falling to us a lot. Ultimately, when we got started as a venue, we just weren't in charge of running the day. It was just one of those things where we were there if they needed help.
Right.
And I would say probably like 80% of the time it would end up falling onto us anyway. So now it's something that we just include. We call it the day of coordination.
And it's included.
And it's
every time.
included. Yep.
Okay.
We decided to just include it because it happens.
Yeah.
So you might as well mark it that you do it if you're
Yeah.
going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, having someone as that point person to help keep you on your timeline and help run the day. You do this a lot as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think I always have to deal with the idea that couples don't always know exactly what they want. Like they have this vision and they know kind of the outcome that they want, but they don't always know the plans that need to go into that for that to happen. And one of the biggest things is having a day of coordinator. That's the thing. When people call me and they're looking for a DJ and I start selling them on, I'm going to help coordinate. I'm going to help you put together a schedule. And I hardly even talk about music actually, because that's what couples after the wedding say. They're like, kept us on schedule. Because I mean, you've seen it. We talked about it. If there's no schedule, nothing's going to happen.
The coordination is the thing couples need that they don't know they need
Yeah.
until they have the coordination day of,
Right.
and then they're like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're here. Like you're
Yeah.
so on top of it. You know what we need. But I feel like until that point, they don't actually understand how much it's needed.
Right. And you can't tell
So-
them you don't understand.
Oh yeah.
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 Another thing that I see often is photographers having to be the coordinator.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
I hate that.
I do too. Yeah.
Not that they can't be good at it, but I just feel bad because their job is to be the artist behind the camera and capture all of that.
I feel like very similarly, it's obviously their job's the photographer, but similar to the bride, their job's to be in the moment and to capture those moments. And if they get so caught up on, here's the timeline, here's the schedule, we have to stick to this, it pulls them out of that moment, and they can't just be in the moment to capture that moment and that love. So
I agree. Yeah. Okay. This next one.
this is your go-to.
This next one. This is my, I hate it so much. Receiving lines. We could probably do, and maybe we will do a whole episode on this, but receiving lines, I think the idea behind them is nice. I have to be careful how I talk about
the idea is nice.
Right.
The sentiment is nice.
But the execution usually is not good.
It's usually rough. Yeah.
I'm going to start with 2 receiving line ideas that I actually am okay with and actually like. So one is right after the ceremony, when the couple is at the back of the ceremony, like the aisle. And as people are leaving, they do a quick thank you or quick, like, congratulations, you're married. Because then it's quick. It's nice, easy, done. They're able to greet all their guests. Their guests are able to thank them for inviting them, all that stuff. So that's one. The second one is, you have to have the right family dynamic for this, but having the families or wedding party serve the food.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it has to be the right fit for your family, but that's a fun idea.
Yeah. There's a family that I've done, 4 or 5 weddings for, and they do this every time. They told me we're going to do a receiving line. I said, don't do it. And they said, well, we're going to do it different. And they did this, and it was really nice because everybody got to say hi to them, but they had to keep the line moving because people want food.
Because people wanted food. So it makes that sense of urgency.
Yeah.
There's nothing I've disliked more than like there being a receiving line and it's just backed up because someone is just sitting there chatting. But if you have food, it moves you along. That's smart.
Yeah. So receiving lines, I'll give my 30-second hate speech about it. One, they don't give you the opportunity to say hi to the people, spend the amount of time that you want to with the people that you care about more, and spend less time with the people that you care about less, because there's the pressure from behind. 2, it makes the people that are standing in line, it's boring for them because most of the time they're not standing by people who they really know. So for them, it's kind of boring. The people that are finished, they don't really have any activities to do because there's, what can you do during a receiving line? And also during the receiving line, you can't stop it. Once you start it,
there's like, what are you gonna do? Cut it? Like when people are upset, Yeah. I feel like too, so I actually haven't seen too many of these at our venue. We don't do a lot of receiving lines. Okay. However, I've gone to weddings where there have been receiving lines. And another point that I don't love about them is like I've been in receiving lines where they have bride and groom and then like the parents of bride and groom and grandparents of bride and groom. And you know how awkward it is to be waiting in line and it's like, you don't even know this guy and it's his grandpa and you're like, sup, like what do we talk about while everyone else is talking? And it's awkward.
Hi, I'm never going to talk to you again.
Never going to talk to you again. This is who I am. If you even care who I am.
Right.
Like it's just so awkward. It's such an awkward way to start a reception off.
Yes. The way I always tell couples, the way I explain it is you don't start watching a Netflix movie and continue to the end if the beginning is terrible.
Yeah.
The same with a reception. If the beginning is boring, you're probably not going to stick around.
Yeah. You're going to be like, hey, this is boring. I'm going to grab some food and dip.
Yep.
So.
Exactly. So, the alternative.
Yeah.
To a receiving line, I think it's pretty simple. I just have a mingling hour. Bride and groom, I tell them their rules are they have to stick together. Bride and groom are a couple, right? They have to stick together and they have to try and get to every single person that comes in. That's their job. It's not a time to just hang out with their friends. And when we've done that, it works out really well.
Yeah.
Because it accomplishes what they're trying to do with the receiving line in a much more organic and genuine way.
Exactly. I agree.
We're probably preaching to the choir. But.
Probably. But. Yeah. The next way is a luncheon, having a luncheon.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to receiving lines. We actually don't see too many luncheons at our venue, but I definitely don't love luncheons.
I just think they're very little value, other than food. That's the only reason that people, not the only reason, generally the main reason that people do it. And I just think that there's not much value there. If you're not going to be doing speeches, if you're not going to be doing any games, not that everybody loves doing games, but if you're not doing anything that really matters, then
why
are you doing it? There's McDonald's.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said there's no value there. If you're really dead set on having a luncheon, then make it purposeful, have toast, do speeches, play a game or something, make people appreciate that they are there, not just, oh, I'm here for the food and why else? All right.
Right.
Bye. Like, there's just so many other ways you can add value to that and make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
I do think another thing is, depending on what your whole timeline for the day looks like, a luncheon can throw in an awkward gap. So,
true.
When I got married, it was really big in my family. They were like, whatever you do not have everyone have to be there all day. Like, do not make people like, well, you have to be there in the morning for this, and then lunch for this, and then dinner for this. They're like, don't do that. It's inconvenient. Everyone will like it so much more if they have a break or whatever. We got married early in the morning. So instead of going morning ceremony, luncheon, and then dinner reception, I just said, okay, our ceremony's in the morning. Whatever you do for the afternoon, go have fun, and we'll see you for dinner.
I like that.
So
I think it's good.
Everyone loved it, and they were like, okay, I got to go run errands or whatever, because it's their Saturday too. It's their day off. They have things that they got to do, and then they came back for dinner and partied. Yeah. So
Yep, exactly. I don't think it's a bad idea to order some sub sandwiches for people that are helping with the day, but that's, having like a formal sit down luncheon, it's just, I don't know. It works for some people, just not for me. Yeah, agreed. This next one is, for me, it's a party killer. Yeah. Cleaning up before it's over. Like, if there's a good dance party going on and they start taking down the tables, man, it just kills it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I definitely see this a lot as a venue.
Yeah. Do you have a policy about this?
So I wouldn't say we have like a written policy, but I am always very strict with my staff and our interns and whatnot. It's been a long day. Of course, you're wanting to get out, but that's besides the fact. It's their wedding day. It doesn't matter how long you've worked. Yeah. But there is nothing that kills the mood faster than like, well, we're going to start cleaning up. We do try to help out however we can. So, but it's a fine line. Yeah. So saying, okay, well, it's getting close to 10. They're going to need to start wrapping up. Let's start help collecting trash. But it's very specific how it looks. It is not, I am clearing the table of everything, because that's going to make the couple feel rushed and like you have to leave. But it's, may I grab that can for you? Oh, I'm going to grab this can. It's very delicate to kind of help the cleanup. We don't start taking down until it is very apparent that the guests are taking down. Yeah. Even if, if it's getting close to their deadline and they are just like nowhere near looking to start cleaning up, that's not on us to start. We find our point of contact and then say, hey,
that makes sense.
It's always going to look better if the client starts cleaning up than us. We had an instance where, I can't remember all the details, but we were very delicately taking care of trash. Right. And she was pretty wasted. But this one party guest comes up to us slurring and is like, y'all are killing the mood cleaning up. Like, how dare you start cleaning up this wedding? Like, we're not anywhere near ready. And, so you want to be very careful how you approach it. But we've just found it's always best to not really clean up till someone that they know from their party starts cleaning up. If mother of the bride starts grabbing cardboard boxes, to us, that's a green light. Like, all right, let's go. Let's get moving. So.
And for me, it's I don't know if you realize you said it, but for me, it's the difference between cleaning up and taking down.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can clean up, and I think that that's nice to just keep tables
Yeah.
looking nice.
Yeah.
But taking the tablecloths off, that's a whole different story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just don't do it. And I recognize that family wants to get out of there too. Like,
Oh yeah.
the father of the groom that is like, I'm tired.
Oh yeah.
I want to get out of here. I want to be helpful. I'm bored.
Mm-hmm.
Start taking down. But
almost every wedding, about a half hour before they typically start cleaning up,
yeah,
it's usually father of the bride finds us and is like, all right, so what's the sitch? Like, what do I need to know for
Interesting.
takedown? And then, we'll fill him in.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are usually eager to get going just as much.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. Okay, next, hiring bad vendors. This is a great way to ruin a wedding.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you, I guess if we're talking mostly to vendors,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe from the planner's side, how do you avoid hiring bad vendors?
I think a lot of it can start early with even just having a solid list of recommendations,
Okay.
If you have that your bride and groom are looking for vendors, if they, I don't know if you're similar, but what I have found is a lot of times they are just right off the bat like, well, who do you recommend? And if you give them a list, it's very rare they go off that list.
Right.
So that's one way to kind of nip it in the bud and avoid bad vendors. But a lot of times it's just inevitable and it's, oh, well, I could talk all about this, but I have a friend who does this.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other situation. But there's a lot that you can't do with that, and you just have to accept it.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of that comes into communicating with that vendor and just setting up what your expectation is, what their expectation is, and just being on the same page.
Yeah, I agree. And this isn't just vendors in my mind. This isn't just vendors that are not skilled at their jobs. I think it's also vendors that are not team players.
Oh, agreed.
And that can be just as detrimental as somebody that's really bad at their job, because if there's one person that has their own agenda and everybody else is on the team, that one person is going to screw everything up.
Yeah.
Or at least throw a wrench into the mix. And I don't know, anytime I work, I'll be honest. A lot of times DJs and planners, they have a tough time getting along.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about why, but generally it's because they just have a different view on what the wedding day looks like. And I just worked with a vendor, a planner this last weekend at LaBelle, and I called up and I said, hey, I want to know how I can support you. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. How can I support you and make sure that I am not stepping on your toes, but I'm also able to do my job? And for her, that took down her walls. And she's like, oh, thank goodness. I'm really nice. Grateful that you reached out, because now we can figure out who's doing what. And some people are not willing to have that conversation.
For sure, yeah.
For me, a vendor with a bad attitude.
Yeah. So what is your suggestion if you get to a wedding and there is just a vendor that is not a good vendor?
Oh geez, man, it really depends on the situation, the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if there's a photographer that's taking way too long with the couple, right? We've planned for an hour during cocktail hour, and it's been an hour and 15 minutes and they're still going for it. I like to check with a couple and say, hey, how are you guys doing? Because maybe this is what they want. Even though we had planned something different, maybe this is what they want. I am really careful to try and give my opinion without stating this is what we have to do, because I'm not a yes man. I'll make sure to say, your guests are maybe getting a little, hungry or whatever it is. But you also have to, make sure that you're going by what the bride and groom want. On that same wedding, or maybe it was the day before, I don't remember. I had two
It's
Two
all a
weddings in
blur.
LaBelle. Yeah.
All a blur.
And one of the uncles
Okay.
was following around the photographer with a phone. I don't know if you were there for this.
I wasn't.
He was following the couple around with his phone doing video.
Okay.
And one of the other family members.
Like intentionally or just for him?
So that's what we couldn't tell. Right?
Okay.
I wasn't sure. But he was like right on him.
Yeah.
So one of the other family members said, yeah, this guy just doesn't know when to quit. I'm like, does he need to be talked to? And he said, yeah. So I went over and I said, hey, can we just give them a little bit of time with the photographer just alone? And he said, well, the groom asked me to do this. I said, oh, okay. All right. How
Cool.
about it?
Yeah.
And I kind of double checked and I didn't ask the groom right away because that would be embarrassing. But
Yeah.
in that instance, that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
So he wasn't being a bad vendor. I mean, family member, whatever.
Yeah.
But I had to kind of tiptoe around it. But there have been times where I have to say, look, I understand that you're trying to do your job, but this is the plan that we've worked out and we really need to move forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to kind of be a jerk about it. Not,
Yeah.
I mean, a nice jerk. I don't know.
Oh, no, for sure. I think kind of from the venue side, I don't work as much with the vendor relation with the couple, but I do work a lot with the vendor relation with us as a venue. And so we have had instances where we get a vendor that comes in and they are just like destroying the property or something. And
Really? Like creating damage? Wow.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's something that you just have to talk with that vendor. And at the end of the day, you know, you have to be as polite as possible, but you also have to be firm and say like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I'm just the biggest advocate for communication.
Yeah.
And of course you have to be polite about it, but just making the expectation clear and just saying, this is unacceptable. You know, I need you to stop this.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Wow. Luckily, we don't have to deal with that too often. I don't,
It's true.
anyways.
Yeah. No, you find great vendors and they're great. So,
yeah. Next.
Again, with the communication, you
Yeah.
know, I think a big ruiner of weddings is miscommunication with clients. I could just rant forever about communication and
for
how
sure.
important it is. But being sure that if there's anything that's even slightly confusing or not understood, making sure that's all taken care of before the day is critical.
Yep.
I also rant about this all the time with my staff, but having everything written down is crucial.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So like, here's the thing. If you have a conversation with someone, if they're like, hey, I'm confused about this, and you're on the phone with them and you're like, hey, let's clear up this confusion, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You get on the same page, done, your phone call ends. There's no record for it to be known that that was clear or made clear.
Interesting.
So I always tell my staff, you know, you have to have a paper trail. Unfortunately, just with how some people can be, you can make something as clear as day. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, well, I was never told that.
Right.
And you're like, yes, you were, but okay. And if
Yeah,
you have
word.
nowhere to reference it, then,
Yeah.
you know, it's pointless. And so even having a phone call and then saying, you know, writing up that quick email that says, you know, thank you so much for talking with me today. Here are the points, whatever. Just having a written trail is so incredibly important.
Yeah. There's another venue that I work with often, and she said the same thing. She said the same exact thing. You got to have everything written down.
You do.
The planning app that we use, everything that we put in there, the client can see. Everything the client puts in there, we can see.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime there's a change, we're both seeing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Even with that, I always make sure to go through it point by point and say, okay, your ceremony is starting at this time. Your bridesmaids are walking down to this song, and it's this version. And oftentimes I'll play it for them and say, is this correct?
Yeah.
Because years ago, I played, probably most people have heard this song, Never Stop by Safety Suit.
Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time, I was still pretty new. I didn't realize that there was a wedding version and a non-wedding version. So I hit play, and like it's hard guitars playing, and the bride and groom turn to me like, this isn't the right song. Like,
oh
shoot.
no.
So we figured it out, and we we got the right song. But ever since then, I always make sure like that the details, for especially the important moments, they're clear as day, and that they give their check on it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, not just for them, but for you as a vendor, making sure like when I'm about to read off a name, I'm announcing.
Yeah.
And if there's any confusion in my mind because I hadn't gone over it with them, like, how do I say that name and say it confidently if I don't know that it's the right pronunciation? So
Yeah.
just going through, making sure it's not just for the clients, but it's for you too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I see this from the venue side as our policies. Whenever we book a client that, they want to book our venue, I send them over the contract and I say, these are the policies. Do you have any questions? And that is the time for them to ask any questions. Because after that, it's written there, it's stated, but it's pretty common that, something can be so crystal clear to you. And for someone else, there's always going to be a misunderstanding. But so many times they'll be like, well, I thought it meant this, or
Right.
I thought I didn't understand it like that.
Yeah.
And so just making sure everything is so crystal clear to them is so important. We go over a lot of that in our details meetings with them as well, where we meet with them 2 months before their wedding and go over all the details of their day. And if there is anything that they are even slightly hesitant on, it's like, okay, we're not going to move forward till this is clear.
Interesting.
So, of course, nicely, but like we want them to feel confident in understanding everything, just as we want to feel confident in understanding everything.
Yeah. Because, I'm sure you've seen it. They show up on the day of and they have one expectation and you're not able to provide that, or that's not something that you do. It's going to ruin the day.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. Ultimately, no matter how clear you think it is, there's always someone who's not going to read it clearly. And so even though for you, you're like, well, this is clear as day. Like we don't, like a really basic one for us is we don't provide food or drinks.
Right.
It's clear as day in the contract.
Okay.
We emphasize that, but there's always going to be someone that's like, you don't serve alcohol? You don't have at the booze? Where's the booze?
Right.
And it's like, no, that's not on us. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I love it. Let's see. Staff not being in the head game or too relaxed.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure we both could talk to this.
Yeah. I think we're kind of seeing it right now. We're filming in September and we're just right in busy, crazy wedding season. And I've noticed, my staff is fantastic, but it's not unheard of, even for myself, to just not be get my head in the game. You know, it's pretty easy to be like, oh, well, this is our third wedding this week and I'm so tired. And so like not having your head in the game is a huge way to ruin a wedding. I think also being too relaxed, going into it as, oh, this is just another day at work. Like everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like way to kill a wedding mood, just another day. Like
when it's somebody's day that they've been planning for months or sometimes years.
Exactly.
And to show up and just say, just work.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing is crooked. It's fine. Like it's not fine.
It's not Yeah, a lot of the training that we do for our DJs is how can we be authentic in, at the very least, the announcements that we make.
Yeah.
Hopefully your whole demeanor throughout the day. But how can you be authentic? I don't want to go into it too in depth, but humans are really, really good BS meters, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a DJ that says, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the, I do not feel like I'm a lady or a gentleman when somebody says that. But if the DJ is looking around and says, ladies and gentlemen, and you really feel it from them, and you're going to trust them later. So having DJs, having DJs that are not in the head game, they are setting the tone for everyone else at that wedding. They're not the only component, of course, but yeah, they need to be in the head game. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, a lot of times when you're in customer service, you talk about fake it till you make it, put a smile on. But like you said, humans are excellent BS readers. And so if someone comes up to you with a concern and they're like, I have a concern about this. If you're just like, oh, yep, I will address it. They're going to be like, okay, they didn't hear
They're not gonna
a
do
word I
anything.
said. Like,
Yeah.
they don't actually care. And so being authentic and being genuine in every interaction is crucial.
Yeah.
So
It can be difficult. with some
it can be
people,
totally
but,
difficult, but it's crucial.
Um,
Another note I have here is just, it's so hard to do. But when you are at work, you need to keep work and your personal life out.
Yeah.
It can be really hard to do. You know, life happens. And obviously, if there's something massive, then you need to be able to look at the situation and say, I'm not in my top game. I need help or something like
Right.
that. But at the end of the day, you know, if there's something going on in your personal life, you need to leave it at the door when you come to work, and you are there solely for your couple.
Yeah.
And you are there to make their day amazing. And, you know, I always just, in my mind, I'm like, well, whatever's going on at home, it's out of my mind. I can't even think about it.
Right.
You know, my husband will call me and be like, well, what about this? I'm at work. It's not in my head.
Yep.
So.
Yep. 100%. Which goes to the next point, just keeping your client as your number one focus. I mean, you have to. If we were in a different industry, it'd be different. But for a wedding,
exactly,
they need that. They expect
need that. Well, and that's the thing. That's the expectation, you know?
Yeah.
You are putting yourself out there as the person to help bring their day to life.
Yeah.
And so they need you to be, they need you for them to be your number one focus, whatever
right,
I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I agree.
Cool.
So.
Also, okay, so a good way as a vendor to ruin the wedding, I guess as anybody, is to not check the vibe that you're sending out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you and I were kind of talking about this at this last weekend's wedding, but even as simple as just what vibe are you sending? How are you standing? I mean, are you sitting there watching everything super closed off and arms closed, and are you approachable?
Right.
Like, no, you're not. And no matter how hard you try, you're going to end up in the back of pictures. That's one thing I have learned. You know, as much as you try, there's always a photo that gets posted. I'm like, oh, there I am.
There I am.
And so you always want to be aware of what vibe am I sending? Are my arms crossed? Am I open, approachable? You know, even you don't want to just sit there and like fake smile the whole time,
right.
But
at least look pleasant.
But look pleasant.
Yeah.
You know, don't look like you're in pain or something. So
yeah, agreed. Another thing I've had to train myself to do is to walk.
Yeah.
My for some reason, my initial when I'm trying to get somewhere, I just want to run.
Yeah.
On a wedding day, especially at LaBelle Lake, because it's
super far.
But if people see that I am running and they see that I'm holding a clipboard, so they know that I'm kind of in charge and I'm running, something's wrong.
They're instantly like, oh, what's wrong?
Right.
He's running.
Yeah. They may not say it. They may not even think it, but they know.
But they know.
If they see the people in charge walking casually, even if we're behind schedule, it's okay.
Exactly.
They've got it under control.
I think a big thing too is you have to be so careful with how you're using your cell phone.
Cell phone use.
Yeah, how you use your cell phone. I mean, the thing is, you know, as a vendor, you want to get material for your story or for Instagram or something. So, you know, you sit there, you take a picture or video, but then when you're putting it on, you have to be so careful how that looks. I usually tell my staff, like, don't add stuff till you're out of sight in the garage or something.
Yeah.
We hang out in the garage, you know. But that's the thing is, because even if it's something that is so important, how does that look if you're just sitting there texting? You know, you could be texting the bride, but how does that look to people? They're not going to know that.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be so careful. Also, if you have to take like a phone call, it's still better than texting, but step away, remove yourself, and still know how your body language is while you're on that call. Are you slouching and taking a casual call, or are you taking care of business? Yeah. So
I always try, anytime I'm taking a phone call, I step away so that I'm off stage. Exactly. People are still going to see me, but they know, people have cell phones, things happen.
Exactly.
But I always wait till the end of the night to Instagram all my stuff. I
That's
take the
smart.
video and then I wait till the end of the night.
Mhm.
And for me, that works.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not very good at like Instagramming, so I can like focus on that. But yeah, if you take yourself out of the game by putting yourself into your cell phone, people are going to see it. So
Exactly.
and you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about. Maybe we can go through these pretty quickly.
I think we can.
Okay, you haven't walked through, we kind of talked about this, but haven't walked through the details of the day. And this can mean a lot of different things. I think for your staff, this might be something that they've practiced over and over again, so they know exactly what to do. But for a new
Yeah.
trainee, it might not be. So, for example, this is something you guys do.
Yeah. So because honestly, this is kind of where going through the details is where our details meetings came from. We didn't used to do details meetings, but we just found out, hey, it's better to talk with bride and groom way before wedding day so that they are just, not
Yeah.
in the moment of their wedding, but even just all the little details. So, do you have a wedding cake? If you have a wedding cake, are you serving it or is it just for the two of you? If you are choosing to serve it, who is serving it?
Right.
I've seen so many times couples get this massive, stunning cake and they are like, yeah, we're serving it. And they do their cut and then everyone is just waiting around. They're like, so when do we
Right.
get to eat? And then no one gets to eat it. And it's so sad because most times it just gets thrown in the trash and
Right.
it's so much money. So, delegating who is going to do this. That is something I've trained my staff on because it's just easy for us to, once you know how to cut a wedding cake, it's easy.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us to offer and say, oh, well, do you have someone you would like to serve it? And then most times they're like, well, who knows how to cut a wedding cake? Oh, well, my staff does. They'll just take care of it for
Yeah.
you. So
And I mean, in the scheme of things, it's a small thing.
it is a small thing.
But not having this plan beforehand, it can really throw
it can just
throw
throw it
things
off.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it just adds some question and some pressure. And, more often or not, if someone doesn't know how to cut it, then they are just completely terrified. And they're
Right.
like, how do I cut this thing? I've only been scared to cut a cake once, but it was a really, really tall, skinny
Yeah.
cake. But, but when you're trained and ready, it's not as scary.
Yep. So probably the same can be said for if who's doing toasts, who's pouring the champagne for the toast, especially with alcohol concern, that can be depending on the venue that you're at. Who's going to fluff the bride's dress?
Yeah.
I think almost more important than fluffing the bride's dress is who knows how to bustle that dang dress.
Exactly.
That has been such a problem at
thing.
more weddings than I can count.
Yeah.
We're ready to do the grand entrance, and they're like, we need like
We
5
need it
more minutes.
bustled.
And it turns into 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe that's something I'm going to start talking to him about. Make
Do
sure
it.
that somebody
Do it.
knows how,
Mhm.
man.
But I think too, being aware of all those little details, it helps show the bride and groom that you are the professional,
Right.
that expertise. I mean, the amount of times I talk to a couple and they're like, I would have never thought of that. That's why you're the professional. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh,
Thank you.
I guess, okay. Yeah, sure.
yeah,
Sounds
okay. And then I think also important is having a point of contact for the day and delegating who that is.
Yeah.
That's not the bride. That's a big one that we hit in our details meetings is because if, sometimes the bride wants to have questions asked to her, and that's okay. Day of, if we have a question, she wants us to talk to her, that's fine.
Right.
But who are you going to talk to if something's not going to plan? Shouldn't be the bride.
Right. No way.
She shouldn't be aware of it.
Yeah.
So, and also it's important to know whoever that point of contact is, they're going to be the ones getting instructions for cleanup and all those little details.
Yeah.
And so most times we do advise, it's not required, but we do advise whoever your point of contact is going to be that day, will they be drinking? Because
Oh, interesting.
a lot
Yeah.
of times if they are drinking and if they have a little too much to drink, it's next to impossible to get all the information
Right.
clearly across. So,
Interesting. I never thought about that, but that makes sense.
yep.
Not having a clear plan for cleanup. No one wants to figure out clean up when they're drunk and celebrating. That's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
So
Because especially depending on the venue that you're at, some venues, they're like, we'll take care of everything for you.
yeah.
You pay us,
Yeah.
we'll take care of everything. Other times, and I've been to weddings. There was a wedding just recently. I don't know if they got their deposit back because at the end of the night, I was the last person out and it was still kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And so they might not get their deposit back. So
Mhm.
having a plan for that beforehand, that might not
Exactly.
ruin the wedding day, but it'll definitely
It'll-
sour.
I was gonna say, yeah, it'll sour, so it won't ruin the wedding day. But lucky thing about getting married is bride and groom can go off, and they don't have
Yeah.
to deal with cleanup. But if you have this wonderful wedding celebration, and then there's no clear expectations for the guests that are helping clean up, it can really sour. They could say, "Well, that was a great wedding, but remember when we had to clean up and it was such a pain?" Like
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
really sour the memory.
I had a good friend that got married years ago down in Utah, and at the end of the night, it was my wife and I cleaning up our DJ stuff, and the bride and groom cleaning up.
I've had that
I was
happen
like,
too.
Get out of here! What are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah.
And I mean, because he was a good friend, we just we cleaned up. But
hmm
I mean, normally I wouldn't do that.
Oh,
and
same.
I
Yeah.
just felt bad. So
I've had that happen too, where like all of the family members leave, and then it's my staff and bride and groom, and we're like, "What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, go!" And we don't typically do all of that. We won't clean up their decorations and whatnot. But like, is bride and groom? It was like, "Go! We'll just go.
Yeah.
We'll take care of it."
this is your day to be king and queen.
Exactly.
clean
Like,
up.
why are you here
Yeah.
cleaning up? So
Okay, the last one that probably maybe this is more for couples to think about, but
yeah,
inviting everyone to the reception.
yeah,
Everyone. Having the parents invite everyone they can think of. I think it's a big mistake, and I think it
agree.
can ruin a wedding.
I agree. Well, and I think kind of in a more specific example, if you invite everybody under the sun, then what does that look like for your food and your beverage?
It's expensive.
It's expensive. And then on top of that, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed like RSVPs they don't work.
They don't work at all.
And so you plan for like 400 people, but then what happens if only 200 show up? Then you've
Right.
spent all this money on food and drink. And not only does that go to waste of food, waste of money, but ultimately you are setting yourself up for a letdown. Because
Yeah.
if you invite 400, and even if you have 200 of your closest friends there, it's going to feel like, well, it's not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
You're going to set yourself up for a letdown.
Yeah.
So,
Some of the best weddings, we've had a few weddings this year that were micro weddings. We had a couple that came from Georgia, and dude, it was fun.
yeah,
They had 20 people.
that's awesome.
That's it. 20 people,
Yeah.
including the bride and groom.
Wow.
And it was so much fun because everybody that was there, they were like 100% there.
they're there for
Because
them.
I think there's a difference if somebody comes to your door and they say, "Hey, we're having a big get together. Come, we'd love to have you come." Like, that's one thing. But if somebody comes up to you and says, "I'm getting married and I really want you to be there. We're not going to have very many people there,
yeah.
and I really want you there." You're like, "Dude, I'm there." And you're going to
Yeah.
party when you're there
Oh,
because you
yeah.
know that you're cared about. Whereas if you're just one sheep in a whole,
Exactly.
it's no fun.
Exactly. I agree. I think just kind of tiny going along with that, a little different, but tiny. Especially when setting up for a ceremony, something we do as a venue is we always put less chairs than expected,
Yeah.
because there is nothing more sad than your wedding photos and wedding video looking empty.
Yeah.
Or you're standing up at the altar and you look out and it's empty. That's a way to kill a ceremony moment for
That's
sure.
smart.
So we usually go less, and then if we need to put more out, fantastic. We're here
Cool.
for it. We got them ready, and boom, they're there.
Yeah.
It's just nothing's more sad than empty chairs.
That's
So,
or even if all the chairs are filled and there's a few people standing,
yeah,
like that's great as opposed, and it could be the same amount of people, but if you had more chairs, then it would look at it. That's really smart.
yeah.
Smart.
Thank
I
you.
like it. Those are our ways to ruin a wedding. There are probably other ways that you've seen. If you've seen other wedding faux pas, let us know.
Let us know. We want to
I'd
hear
love
them.
to hear it. So, all right. Well, signing off. And let's see, what should we talk about next week? Our next episode will be talking all about community over competition, why it's important to focus on the community instead of how you're better than the next person. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, me too. I think it'll be a good one.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
okay, we'll see ya.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Top Secret Wedding Podcast.
Subscribe, rate, and review us, and we'll see you next time.